It's said that a swamp is a place that can't make up its mind whether it's earth or water. So it compromises. Hi, I'm John Viehman. Join us poling in the swamp of swamps in a state that's mostly swamp, the Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana, as we make our own adventure on Trailside. The Mississippi River carries more water than any other river in North America as it flows 2,000 miles south into the Gulf of Mexico. As it nears the end in Louisiana, about a third of that flow disperses into the Atchafalaya River Basin, a floodplain that's 100 miles long and 30 miles wide. Now down here, floodplain is just another way of saying swamp, and this is among the world's largest. In fact, the people that live in the Atchafalaya take pride in calling themselves swampers. Now, swamps have a bad reputation, and almost everything you've heard is, well, more or less true. Like New York City, you have to push past a lot of negatives to get it all that good. And that means pushing past the heat, humidity, and biting insects to get at the beauty, isolation, and a diversity of wildlife that you just won't find anywhere else. And that also makes this the kind of place that stops the casual tourist dead in the water. How do you tell the difference between a swamper and a tourist down here in the Atchafalaya Basin? Well, the swamper is probably gliding across the water in a pirogue, an odd-looking wood plank boat that rides high on the water so it can negotiate the shallow depths down here in the swamp. Oh, and the swamper? He's not lost. We'll be traveling with a swamper. John Viehman has been guiding down here for 19 years, and for 8 of those years, he was one of the few people that built pirogues. And these days, he's content to just take people out into this water world and research his book on edible and medicinal plants of the basin. Hey, John.
How's it going, John?
Good. Is that one of your boats?
Yeah, this is a pirogue.
Yeah, it's looking pretty smooth out there.
Man, I'm at home in one of these.
Now, what is it that makes a pirogue anyway?
Well, a few things. It's got a wide bottom, so you have a lot of surface area, and that allows you to go in shallow water.
Mm-hmm.
The side is narrow, so it doesn't catch too much wind to make a sail out of it. And it's very light, it's very maneuverable.
Now, where do pirogues come from?
Well, they're an evolvement of the dugout that the Indians made. They used a cypress tree and they scooped out the inside of it, pointed both ends of it, and they had a vessel to transport themselves around in.
Mm-hmm. Now, why didn't they just use the open canoe that was so common around North America about those times?
Well, essentially it was the material. Birch doesn't grow down here, and the Indian had the cypress tree, which doesn't rot, and bugs won't eat it.
And they've become these modern-day versions, which are, what, made out of plywood?
Yeah, this is just marine plywood. This is what it's evolved to. Mm-hmm. It's very light and it's very strong.
Okay. Now, what's this pole for that you've got in the canoe?
Well, this is for push poling, John. When you don't have enough water to paddle in, this goes down on the bottom and you just propel yourself along. And then you pick it up and you get another stroke and go right along. And that wide foot on it is to give you some surface area on the bottom so your pole doesn't stick down into the mud.
Mm-hmm. Now, this one's different. It's got metal on the end of it?
Yeah, well, that's our high-tech version. This is called a duckbill, and it opens up to give you your surface area. And then when you pull back against the suction of the mud that it's in, it closes up to allow you to pull your pole out so that you don't break your forward momentum.
So if I'm reading you right, this one's easier to use.
Oh, this is a much better pole.
Oh, I'll use this one.
Good. Okay, hold on a second, John. You need to trim your boat a little bit. Your bow's a little low in the water. To bring it up, we're just going to move your gear back, get your weight distributed better, and that'll make it paddle better.
Okay, so I'll get better directional control this
Right.
way, huh? Hey, you know, you can get lost pretty easily down here. You got a map over there we can take a look at and
Sure
see where
do.
we're...
That's a good idea. We should always check this out before we go out.
Okay.
This is called a section map, and it's just a small part of the Atchafalaya Basin around False Point. We're going to be putting off right here at this landing, going across this cut and up this little bayou. Notice the bayou goes across this light area, and that's higher land, which is mainly willow trees. But as it goes further in to the basin, it goes off into this dark area, which is deeper water and all cypress. We call that swamp. Now, if you notice, it looks like it dead ends right here, but it really doesn't. It breaks up into little fingers. That's what we call coulées, and that's when the swamp all begins to look the same. Now, that's where your problem starts, because when you get in there, you can get lost very easily. So you always need to go in with somebody that knows the area, or bring a good map with you and a compass and flagging materials so you can mark a trail to find your way back out. Then you won't have any problem.
And you brought some flagging material, right?
We got everything with us. We're fully equipped.
Well, let's shove off then. Well, it's not too often you come into a whole forest of trees standing in water, huh?
Well, this is a cypress swamp, John.
How big do these cypress get?
I've seen them up to 150 foot tall, 15 foot across the base, and somewhere between 400 and 600 years old.
Do they grow anywhere but in water?
Well, they're a water tree. They like the water the best, but there's some that grow on dry land.
Looks like the water goes up pretty high in here too. Look at the water line on them.
Yeah, this is the floodplain, so where that lichen stops growing up there, that's your high water mark, and that's about 15 foot up.
And what time of year is the highest water in here?
That's the springtime when your tributaries are feeding the meltwater down into the river.
What kind of wildlife do you have down here in this brown water?
Oh, there's a great variety of fish in here. There's many, many kinds of birds. We have beaver, raccoon, otter, mink, bear, alligator. Hey, Roy.
Hey, Jan.
How's it going there, pal?
Oh, pretty good.
I want you to meet a friend of mine. This is John.
Hey, John.
That's Roy.
Hi, Roy. Hey, now what you putting in the water there?
Crawfish trap.
A crawfish trap.
Yeah, the water's coming up there. We're putting out a few test traps there.
How many traps you put out?
Oh, we put about 400 in a run.
400.
Yeah.
And how much fish do you bring in with that?
Oh, a good day we catch 1,000, 1,200 pounds.
1,200 pounds?
Yeah.
And when's your season?
Well, you just start around February and it goes until June, July. All depends how much water we get from up north.
Yeah.
Where y'all heading?
Well, we're going back further in the basin and see if we can find some dry land to do a little camping for a couple of days.
Good weather for it, huh?
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful. Well, it looks like you're busy there. We're going to leave you to your work, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, well, y'all have a good trip.
Thanks a lot.
See you later, Roy.
Y'all be careful.
John, you remember I told you that these bayous don't end, they just break up into smaller pieces we call coulées?
Yeah?
Well, this is one on the left that we're going to go into, and this is my kind of swamp. This is my favorite part of it. This is where you see all the lush growth. There's everything in here. like cypress, tupelo, ash, willow, a lot of water hyacinths. It's lush with vegetation.
It's getting shallow in here too, huh?
Yeah, well, I think this is where we have to put the paddles up and get the push poles out. This is push pole country. Let me show you how that's done. When you stand up, put your feet on both sides of the boat.
Okay.
And stagger them. One behind the other. And you're standing a little behind midships. You keep your pole parallel to the boat with your thumbs facing forward, and you go hand over hand to the end of the pole. When you pull your pole up, you go hand over hand backwards. Now to turn, you just use your pole as a lever.
Turn with your feet?
Yeah, you have to keep your knees limber and keep your upper body stiff.
Sort of like dancing on top of a needle, huh?
Yeah. Now we're gonna have to watch it in here. The water's real shallow. And there's a lot of things you can run over, like this log I'm going over. We have submerged cypress stumps, cypress knees. So just stay flexible and you won't have too much of a problem.
That brown colored water doesn't help you see anything either, does it?
Not a bit. Now coming up here, we have a sharp right turn, and the technique for getting through that is to put your pole on the opposite side you're going to turn to, about 90 degrees from your boat, and shove your bow over and use your feet to swivel.
Well, judging by all the stumps in here, there must have been quite a few cypress trees in here at one time.
Yeah, John, South Louisiana was covered with cypress. It was wall to wall.
Well, what happened to it all?
Well, starting around 1870, they began harvesting it, and by 1940, they had removed every cypress tree in South Louisiana.
Well, if it's been that long and these stumps are still standing like this, that really means that cypress is resistant to rot, isn't it?
It's a perfect tree for resisting water because it lives in water all of its life, and then they built everything out of it that had to resist water, like boats, barges, barns, even the dock you put your boat on.
Are there any of the original groves still standing?
No, John, they took it all. In 70 years, they harvested 7,000 square miles of this virgin cypress. This looks like a good place to camp here on the left.
I know, what makes that a good campsite?
Well, I see some willow trees in there, which means the ground's going to be fairly firm. And we got a little ground cover, so it won't be too muddy. And there's a possibility we might be able to do some foraging. There's several things here to eat, like palmetto and swamp root. A little tricky here, John.
Plenty muddy in here.
Yeah, man. Now, don't step out hard. You gotta step out easy because the ground is soft and you'll be up to your neck in it. Keep on walking.
Yeah, I can see that. Hey, you think we'll have mosquito problems down here?
It's coming on winter, so there shouldn't be any mosquitoes.
You call that the swamper's hitch, huh?
Yeah, it's never let me down before.
Well, I'm going to give that one a try.
Good, and I'm going to go get the trot line ready.
All right. Well, there are a couple advantages to using a hammock tent in a swampy area like this one. First of all, it gets you up off the damp ground and away from any insects or snakes that might be in the area. And secondly, it allows the air to circulate freely around you at night, which is important for your comfort in a hot, muggy area. Now, as far as siting your hammock tent goes, you want to look for a couple trees about 15 or 16 feet apart. That's just about 5 or 6 healthy paces. Any further apart than that, you're going to end up with a lot of sag, and that could be uncomfortable, especially for your back come the morning time. Now, as far as the height goes, you want your hammock in the middle to be about waist high, with the head a little bit higher than the foot, and the foot pointing into the wind or any prevailing breeze, so that if there is any precipitation at night that gets under your rain fly, you'll just get your feet wet and not your head. Now, as far as tying off, here's that swamper's hitch that Jan was just showing us. And it's a pretty simple friction hitch. And the key is to just come around the tree like that and get your loose end of your line underneath your load-bearing end, right about this point in the tree. Then you just loop around once, twice, and a third time for good measure. The critical part is right here where the load is going to be pinching your line, and it's only going to get tighter as weight comes onto it. Now, another last tip: if your hammock doesn't happen to have a little pocket in it for storing your glasses and flashlight, well, you can just take your spare pair of boots, tie them right here, you've got a handy little pocket. And finally, don't walk away without closing off your bug netting. You want to make sure you keep all the bugs and critters out.
All we got to do is finish baiting this last hook, and then you can tie the end of the line on that stump, John, and this line will be fishing for us while we're out foraging.
Now, what kind of fish bite on cheese?
Almost any fish will bite on cheese, but what we'll mainly catch is catfish.
Now, I thought trout lines were illegal in some places.
Well, in some places they are, but down here they're legal. All you have to remember is when you finish using that line to pick it up.
Oh, look at this pretty flower up here.
Yeah, it's a swamp orchid. It's real pleasing to the eye, and it's got a wonderful aroma.
Yeah, there's another one right here.
Yeah, they're lovely. Now this plant, this is what we call swamp root. See that pretty little flower? And let me get a piece of this up here. Yeah. Yeah, that long white root, that's real good to eat. Just take a taste of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the leaf is a stomach sedative. You make a tea out of that.
It's sort of identified by that heart shape.
Yeah, and it's got about the same aroma as the taste of that root.
Yeah, it almost tastes like a little bit of ginger in it.
Yeah, you could say that.
Now, what are these things sticking up right here?
Those are called cypress knees.
Cypress knees.
Yeah.
What are they, cypress trees in the making?
No, they're just a growth from the root of the tree. They never make leaves, limbs, or ever grow into trees. They just anchor these big trees in this soft ground, keep them from falling over. Oh, look what we got here. Man, we're gonna need this one tonight for supper. This is a laurel. Let me break a limb off. Take a leaf off of that, John.
What is this?
This is bay laurel.
Oh, bay leaf.
Bay leaf, yeah, the one we cook with.
I recognize that smell.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. And look, if we're gonna have salad tonight, now this would be a good plant. You cut that down, slice the trunk open, and take the heart of it out. It's really tender and tasty. This is palmetto. This is gonna be a fish coubillon.
Coubillon, is that Cajun?
That's a spicy Cajun dish.
And what makes it Cajun?
It's the trinity of vegetables that we use, which is onion, celery, and bell pepper.
Is there some order in which you cook them up?
Yeah, we saute the onions first, and then we put a little garlic into it. And then we go and add the celery and the bell pepper. And then we add a little tomato to that. And some hot pepper. And this is what makes it spicy. Now, after this has been cooking for about 45 minutes, next we add all the good stuff that we found out here in the swamp. The catfish that we caught. Wild onion that we foraged. And a couple of these bay leaves that we found out here. Well, this is what we've been waiting for. It looks like it's about ready.
Looks good.
What do you think?
C'est bon.
Yeah, see, I told you I could put some Cajun in you.
What's for dessert?
Well, for dessert, we have water hyacinth blooms, and that tastes just like young watermelon, not quite ripe. Well, it's amazing what you can see out here at night.
What do you mean?
Well, everything is nocturnal, so that's when you see the most of the wildlife. But you got to know how to do it. You can't walk steadily. You got to stop every so often and listen. And not only do you look on the ground, but you also look up in the trees because some of the wildlife is up there. Let's go a few feet more. Okay. Shh. You hear that?
Yeah, it's right over here. There it is. Hey, what is it?
That's an armadillo. They're out there. They should answer.
Doesn't sound anything like the ones we heard last night, Jan. You better give it another shot.
Well, let me say something different to them. I might not be saying the right thing. They have a definite language that they use.
Okay.
And if you don't talk to them with the right words, they won't respond.
All right, well, say good morning to them. Say rise and shine. I'm sure glad you don't wake me up like that in the morning. That's a tough way to wake up.
That's why I'm not married anymore. Oh, it's kind of rough in here, John.
Oh, what is this stuff?
This is water hyacinth. This is a plant that was brought in here from South America. Came from the Orinoco River in 1884. And they used it as an exhibit at the Cotton Exposition in New Orleans. And the Japanese liked that flower so much that they gave little pieces of it to all their friends. And that spread it throughout the world. And once you got it, you got it.
What is all this stuff hanging on these tree limbs anyway?
This is what we call Spanish moss. But it's not actually a moss, it's an epiphyte. It's a plant in the pineapple family, and it lives on air, moisture, and dust.
So it's not like a moss at all, which is actually a parasite on the host plant.
That's correct. It takes nothing from the tree whatsoever. It only uses the limbs to hang on. There's a colorful old legend down here that tells of an Indian princess and her brave, which lived on the bank of this bayou under a big oak tree. And when this princess died, her husband buried her under the oak, cut her 2 braids off, and hung them on the limb above her grave, where they turned gray and blew through the forest of Spanish moss, which continue to weep for her today.
Oh, well, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah, very romantic.
Well, this is some big body of water out here.
Yeah, this is one of our inland lakes. I don't think we ought to cross it. Maybe we ought to camp here.
Camp here? I don't see any place to camp.
Well, all we need is a couple of trees the right distance apart.
Before I came down to the Atchafalaya Basin, I was afraid I'd be hot, sticky, and consumed by bugs. And what I found instead was my own peace of quiet. There's a lesson in that. If you haven't been there, expect a swamp to be unlike any experience you've ever had before, and you won't come away disappointed. Hopefully, your experience will include a stand of graceful cypress laced in Spanish moss, gliding atop the water in a boat no wider than your doormat, and foraging for food in a land that you would have otherwise just as soon forgotten. If you're really lucky, it'll include hanging out at the lake in a style that you would have imagined only in your wildest dreams. Well, I hear a dream calling, so we'll see you next time on another Trailside. Jan, how long did you say we could hang out here?
Well, John, we can stay as long as you want. The only thing we really have to do is be out of here before the water rises next spring.
Oh, check out all these lily pads.
Yeah, this is what the Cajuns call the Grand Volet.
And what's that mean?
Well, that's the American water lotus.
Oh, it's sort of neat the way the water feeds up on them. It's plenty shallow in here. Whoa.
That's why you need a push pole.
Now what?
Available now. A complete series of Trailside guides from W.W. Norton. These informative books are fully illustrated and filled with color photography. Titles include Hiking and Backpacking, Bicycling, Kayaking, Cross-Country Skiing, and Winter Adventures. To purchase, call 1-800-TRAILSIDE, 1-800-872-4574, $17.95 each plus $3.95 shipping and handling. Trailside is brought to you in part by Chevy Trucks. Next time you're having fun outdoors, remember, you're not alone. And LL Bean, providing sporting gear and apparel for people who love the outdoors for over 80 years. And Weider Nutrition Group, makers of Tiger Sport bars. Nutrition for your body, fuel for your sport.